Welcome again, everybody. This is Bradley Ships from OWLS. Thank you for joining us for our webinar today. Our webinar is sponsored by the Youth Services section of WLA. Youth Services section Powerhouse presents School Age Programming Panel. Our panelists today are Sarah Kernoyer of Horicon Public Library, Alexandra Janelle Collins from Brewer Public Library, Katie Kiekefer from Whitefish Bay Public Library, and Amanda Struckmeyer from Middleton Public Library. They are presenting today in alphabetical order, so without further ado, I am going to pass the screen over to Sarah and give us just 1 second to make that transition.
Hello, everybody. This is Sarah, and I am the Assistant Director and Youth Services Librarian here, or Children's Librarian here at Horicon Public Library. And I've got a little map, so we're kind of in that south-central, southeastern part of the state. And I'm going to get my slideshow started, and we'll go from there. So the school age program that I'm here to talk to you about today is one that I call the Make and Take Art Club. So this is a program that is in its 4th year. I started that in 2012. We run through September to May and generally have anywhere from 20 to 35 is our average. Sometimes we just have 10. That's okay. I do find that the age range is generally around 8 to 12 years old, but because we do have a homeschooler population and this appeals to them, we do have it as an open age range from 3 to about 15 currently. I focus on different fine folk and practical arts and techniques, so I don't do toilet paper roll projects and stuff like that generally. We do more of a fine arts. Sometimes we have done things like tied fleece pillows. Those are some of the practical arts. And one of the reasons I started this is because with the drop in art programs in schools, I thought this was a tremendous opportunity to bring in new users. Our arts programs are very popular, foster creativity and critical thinking skills, provide a place for homeschoolers to meet up with other people and other homeschoolers, as well as part of our library's mission is to enrich, educate, empower, and inspire. So this fills that need. I do find that this is a minimal expense. I often use supplies on hand, or they maybe run about $10 to $25 if I'm getting special things. So for me, I am doing a Dale Chihuly-inspired project.
I'm going to jump in for a second. We're getting some feedback from somewhere, and I'm not sure if any of our panelists aren't muted. Mute yourselves. Okay. It stopped. Sorry, Sarah.
No problem.
I think we're okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so I was talking about the expense, and I generally use supplies out of my crafts box, so I just share those with other things. We are doing one where it's a Dale Chihuly-inspired matcha technique, so I'll be using transparencies, and those I bought a pack of 100 for about $15 on Amazon. So that would be my average cost. You can see in the photo here, we do get boys, girls, families participating, and I think that's one of the great draws about this program. Places that I collect inspiration and ideas. There's an art lab for kids, an art lab for preschoolers. I've got links here. These are really great, and I know it says First Start for Toddlers and Twos, and this is a school age program, but the Make and Take Art Club also lends itself really well to process art, and so some of these First Art projects can give me some inspiration for things that I can do, as well as leaving it open-ended for different creative types to explore art without being too stressful. I also really enjoy The Artful Parent and Red Ted Art. I follow them on Facebook as well as looking at their blogs. And then I use Pinterest to collect ideas and organize and track my projects. I also use Pinterest in my description. I'll edit it to give it a date when I select a time, as well as just keeping supply lists. So that's about it. It's not time intensive. Maybe once or twice a month I'll spend about a half hour, or on my own time, I might pop in. So let's see, I'm trying to get the echo away right now. So I was going to jump over to my Pinterest page. So I do have that in my contact information. So this is just some of the stuff. I would like to do a pop-up card program or pop-up book. And so there's some other things, punch tin, painting on brown paper. You can comb through this if you have interest. I'm going to flop back over to the slides, and bear with me here. Get back into slideshow mode. This is one of my flyers for the program. I do print these as a 4-up so that they're available for people to take as reminders on their fridge. All of my after-school programs run on Thursdays at 3:30. I also hand sell these a lot, so if I notice there's somebody who's looking at art books or creative, or when I talk to them at other programs or their parents mention it, I always make sure I talk to them about our after-school clubs. And I've been changing the name to afternoon clubs lately to reflect those who aren't in the school system and who are homeschooling, so that they feel included as well. Here are some finished pictures. You can see I generally, as far as tips go, I often have my program taking place in the children's room, which is what the center picture is, because people will happen upon it in synchronicity. But we also, when I'm doing messy paint projects, I will take it into the meeting room where there is a tile floor, which facilitates cleanup. As you can see, this was a string printing project, and sometimes painting can get a little messy. We do have some other inspiration. So some of the tips I wanted to mention were the bulk brush washing technique, which I use for story time projects too. This is a big time saver if you have those tall quart-sized Chinese takeout type things. Just put your wet brushes in there, brush tip down, add a little water and dish soap, and kind of scrub them up and rinse them till the water runs clear. And this is much easier than individually doing them. The other thing I really like to encourage is that you try the project yourself before doing it with the club. And the reason for that is during a science program, I once discovered that art sand does not work well in a ocean in a bottle. It gums up, and that way you can do some troubleshooting. So it seems common sense, and occasionally you want time, you'll just have to fly by the seat of your pants, but if you get a chance, try it. The other thing is unscented wet wipes are great for cleanup, as well as wiping brushes in between temper projects. If you're talking to kids about their projects using specific praise or comments, I notice you're using a lot of red, or I really like how that blue makes the orange pop, and this is a time that you can build in some information about complementary colors or things on the color wheel. Ask open-ended questions. How did you do that? What did you like best about that? Oh, I notice you're frustrated. Is there something that's not working? So this also allows you, if there are parents around, to help model some of those conversational techniques that help build vocabulary, because even though that's really emphasized in early literacy, it's kind of an ongoing thing to me, and I like to do that. I'd also like to encourage you to have a project in mind, but allow some room for divergence. So sometimes I'll show my sample and I'll leave it kind of just incomplete enough to try the technique without going overboard and having a really specific type. And I find that the kids respond well and they totally take off on their own creativity, and then find ways to say yes. So if somebody suggests a project, look for a way to do that. Snacks. I wanted to talk about that a little bit. A while ago, I initiated a conversation on the ELS listserv about snacks, and I did some investigation. What we have decided to do here at our library is, because kids are hungry in the afternoon, and we do have some kids who are hungry for many reasons throughout, snacks is important to us. So some of the things, after talking to EMTs, school nurses, and parents with peanut allergies, I found that if you keep the packages for any snacks that you're serving for the children or their parents to read, that's great. Your local EMTs will generally come give you a brief demo of how to use the pen. And so that can be helpful. Most kids who are school age are going to carry those along with them, so they're prepared. I do always announce that I'll be serving a snack before I do so, and I can answer any of those allergy questions then. There's also a link here for a peanut safe list, and this one is updated frequently. They do have expiration dates, and you can get, there's a wide variety of snacks that are available. If you know you have gluten-free kids, you can always consider having a gluten-free alternative. So that's my plug for snacks and the snack list, so we can feel confident about feeding kids when they're here. Here are some of the do's. Pick projects you enjoy. Everybody knows that it's not very fun to do things that you don't want to with other people, or to be enthusiastic about it. Try things the kids innovate. Let them teach you, and respond to that. It really boosts their confidence. Recognize their efforts. Choose your location wisely. I have this art cart that you can see. It's a mobile art rack from Discount School Supply, but I like words that rhyme, so we call ours the art cart. And I let kids pick up wet projects later, and this works really well for story times too. Our friends group did buy it for us. It is running about $115 on Discount School Supply. If you do click on that link, you'll get popped over to their shopping page, just in case you wanted to get any more details. I don't get any money from them or anything, but it's been very handy. If you have volunteers who are willing to help you set up, take down, clean up, accept that. I also encourage an each one teach one, and I find that because it is a drop-in program, sometimes some people show up at 4, and that way if a friend shows up or somebody that they know, this happens in our smaller community, they can often share what our project is or how to do it with them. And then take photos yourself, or see if you've got any team volunteers or somebody else on hand to do that, and then share them. Share them on Facebook, share them on Flickr, share them with any kids who are proud of their projects. And that's something that I'm trying to do as best I can, but sometimes it's hard to take the photos when you're doing the program and coordinating the snacks and any spills. So we're almost done here, and here's my only don't be afraid to try something you don't know how to do or that you aren't good at. I think that picture there kind of speaks for itself. That was my very first year here at the library. We had an animal show, and I got a hug from a boa constrictor, and it was kind of making a face because it was shocking how fast it squeezed me. So as far as any of those programs go, I think that's the best thing. Give it a go and have fun with it. So now here's my contact information, and if anybody has questions, I think I'm ready to answer those.
Thank you, Sarah. This is Bradley again. Folks, if you have a question for Sarah, please type it into the question box, and we'll answer those before we move on to the next speaker. Sarah, I do have one question for you. Judy wanted to know what is the time and day of the week for Make and Take?
Okay, Make and Take is on the second Thursday of the month at 3:30. So I also do a book chat on the first Thursday, which is kind of a bring your own book club. And the Lego Club is the third Thursday, and right now we have Pokemon Club in the fourth slot.
Okay. Well, thank you, Sarah Kernoyer from Horicon Public Library. I don't have any more questions right now, so we'll move on to our next panelist. But everyone, if you are still sort of finding your way around, we will answer questions again for everyone at the very end. So you still have a chance to get your questions in. And I am going to change the presenter and pass the baton over to Alexandra Janelle Collins. Give us just a second to make this transition.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and queue up my slideshow, and we will get right into this. So, my name is Alex. I am at the Brewer Public Library, which is in Richland Center, Wisconsin. I'll have a map up in just a second. The program that I want to talk to you guys about today is something that's been really successful at this library. I've been here this is my third month, almost at 4, and I'm taking these ideas from something that I did last summer at the Verona Public Library. So where credit's due, this is something that I've taken from another library and made to work in my own. I think these programs are super transferable, and I am so happy to get to talk to you about them. So Science Saturday is the program, and I've got a note here on the screen. It's early elementary STEAM programming that's really heavy on the science, engineering, and art elements. So let's get going. So this is me, and this is where I'm at here in Richland County. Sorry, Crawford County, that I cut you off there a little bit with the arrow. The Verona Public Library, where I mentioned this program sort of originated, is there highlighted in blue in Dane County. This is some of my contact information. I am so excited about talking with all of you about Science Saturday, and very interested in general about getting more science programming into public libraries. So if you have any questions after this program, I am so happy to take those and help you in any way I can. And those are some of the ways you can get in touch with me. So I think the most important thing that I hear from other people about doing science programming is that they're pretty scared. A lot of people, like Sarah's beautiful art presentation, feel like they can do art or that they could pass art, but science seems a bit harder. And so the number one piece of advice that I would give to anybody who's considering doing science programming is not to worry. You can totally handle this. Einstein is smiling. You should be smiling too. I've done 4 of these programs now at my new library, and I did several of them at Verona, and I do not come from a science background. I have a Bachelor of Arts degree in anthropology, which sort of touches against science, and then my master's in library science, but we know what kind of science that is. It's really, really different from the sort of chemical, physical stuff that we talk about during Saturday. I wouldn't consider myself an everyday lab coat-wearing scientist, and you don't have to be to run fascinating, visually engaging, super dynamic programming at your library. So if the word science in programming scares you, I would recommend that you just toss that notion out the window. Don't let it. You can do this. It will rock. So the formula for Science Saturday, just so you kind of know what I do at these programs, is we do several activities. We call them demonstrations, and we'll touch on the kitchen science note there in a minute. We focus those around a single concept, and I always find that picking the concept is the really hard part. It's a lot like doing story time themes. How do I pick just one? So the way that I free myself up for that is saying, if I think of 5 amazing themes, I'll just do one later. I could do it the following month or a couple months down the road. Sometimes I work backwards, and I come up with something that's going to be one of my demonstrations, and I think, this is so cool. I really just have to theme this around this one demonstration idea. And that's A-okay. I'm sure you've implemented this in Storytime and other programming as well. You are 100% free to program as you wish. But what works best for me when I'm on the ball is to pick a concept, to pick 5 to 6 kitchen science demonstrations that go around with that, And then I want to give the kids at least one thing to take home. And I try to make it one art thing and one sort of chemical or gooey reminder of what we talked about. So sometimes the take home is an art project. Sometimes they get to take home an art project and another thing. I'd like to start Science Saturday with a picture book because this program more or less replaced a once-a-month weekend story hour that was being offered for K through 3 students. I try to keep that age range in mind when I plan for Science Saturday, though we do say that this is kind of aimed at K through 3 and open to all ages, and that's really what we get. We get some older siblings, we get some younger siblings, we get some kids who found out that we were going to blow up candy and are like, sign me up. So anybody who wants to come, I'm okay with that. I think that's generally the rule for open library programming. One thing that you'll see as we go through here that I really recommend you have, and I usually don't, are cameras and volunteers. I don't do my Science Saturday programming with volunteers because I'm fairly new to the community and still establishing my core of volunteers for weekend availability. You don't need them. You can 100% do this on your own, and then you look super cool up in front of all those kids running all the science in the world. But if you've got volunteers, they can really make this program easier for you. And one of the ways would be taking pictures. So as we sort of go through planning Science Saturday, we'll get into that concepts theme now. So what I like to do is think of something that I think kids would like. We're children's and youth services librarians. We've got a fairly good handle on that. And then what do I like? And where is there overlap between those things? And then I like to take those thoughts and just stretch them out like taffy, make a big word cloud in your brain. If you were going to do something like bubbles, okay, well, what goes along with bubbles? Maybe some explosions. How could we make the hula hoop bubbles? What could we do? When you're doing concepts, of course, you're brainstorming and the sky is the limit. If you're doing candy, hey, there's hard candy, there's gummy candy, there's exploding candy. Explosions are always really popular. Explosions are sometimes the theme. That's our third little graphic there. You can really pull in a lot if you give it a little bit of thought. And so the little key there at the bottom is just stretch your brain, and you will have that eureka moment. And then you'll be smiling like Einstein. Kitchen science is something that I wanted to touch on. I love that term. I wish it were mine. I totally steal this from the internet. But I was surprised when I started using it in library practice that not a lot of people were familiar with it. So just to clue in anybody who's new to that term, kitchen science I like to call pretty much anything that's under or in the kitchen sink. Kitchen science is really ideal for library programming because this stuff is easily accessible and it's cheap. You probably have a lot of this stuff already. And so a really famous example of kitchen science is a baking soda and vinegar volcano. Almost everybody has those ingredients either in their craft closets, maybe even under the kitchen sink in their library. And if you don't have them, they're really easy to get, they're inexpensive, and you can get them either in bulk or in tiny packages, so you can really scale this to your audience. Because I'm new to this community and our attendance is a bit all over the place depending on theme, I usually overbuy, and my Science Saturdays have never cost me more than $30. And one of them, as you'll see, had nearly 80 attendees. So these are not expensive programs to put on. If you're going to have something that's a little off the wall within kitchen science, that's going to require a trip somewhere really exotic like Sally Beauty Supply or Walmart. Everything else you could probably get from your local grocery store. Great places to find examples of kitchen science are highlighted here and later on in the slideshow, and you'll all have access to this information at the conclusion of the presentation. I've got links. But I want to highlight just a couple of them, including Steve Spangler Science, which is up that top left logo. I love this one because not only are there great instructions and examples, but there are videos, which are really helpful if you're going to try something new. If all of this is new to you and you really want a visual example, that's a great place to check out. I also love the Kitchen Pantry Scientist, which really takes the kitchen science theme to a new level. She's written a book, which I'll talk about in just a minute. The Lovely Science is Fun banner is actually a professor at UW-Madison, Mr. Shakashiri. He does a website that's really fun to go through with kids. He's a doctor. He's a former president of the American Chemical Society. He's right here in Wisconsin, and he's so excited and happy nerdy about getting kids to do science. So his website is a great resource. Scientific American, the magazine, has a really cool series of online videos, experiments, and demonstrations to do. And then just one more thing to highlight is that Growing a Jeweled Rose box up in the top right-hand corner. And that's actually the blog of a stay-at-home mom who has 2 small daughters. And that, to be really honest, is where I find a lot of the art projects that I do for Science Saturday. If I can't come up with something on my own, I can almost always go to this site and find something that I can tie back. We could do exploding chalk, or we could make glitter slime, or something fantastic. There's cool recipes there, and I really love that resource. Some other fun places to find kitchen science are right on your own shelves, and these things make excellent displays for doing Science Saturday, or places to derive demonstrations or experiments that you can do. The second book that's here on the page is Ruffman's 44 Favorite Science Activities, which is a brand new book. I just added it to my collection on Friday, and it's super cute. And kids, even in my area, which I would consider a bit isolated, recognize that character, love it. It's a really good access point for them to get excited about science, something that's really appropriate for preschoolers and early elementary age students. Great stuff in there. And then the kitchen science book was written by the woman who does the kitchen pantry scientist, so amazing stuff in there. If you're going to look for these books in your library, you're going to want to think 500s if you're on the Dewey system. So these books all came from around 507 or a little later in the series in the 538s. And then, so we've got all these great examples of where you can find things to do, but I think one of the most important things to remember, along with not worrying, is that you're a scientist, you're a librarian, you're totally more observant, I would say, than most people kind of going down the street. So anything that you see that's making you go, as you're just going about your daily life is perfect fodder for Science Saturday stuff. This is a thing that you're reflecting on, and it's going to be a really cool way to bring home a point that you recognize for yourself, and the kids can recognize that too. So also great are things along those lines of, is what happens if we change this up a little bit? If something's cold, what would happen if we made it hot? What would happen if we applied electricity? All kinds of crazy things like that. The best example that I have for that is the gummy worms that you see here on the screen. And my best moment of aha and was getting frozen yogurt with my husband several months ago. Gummy worms are my favorite thing to put on frozen yogurt, and I noticed, and some of you may have too, that when a part of the gummy worm touches the really cold frozen yogurt, it gets stiff. It begins to freeze. How incredible to then bring in this same, flip it, and then the other end is very pliable. So allowing kids to do that at a Candy Science Saturday event was a big hit. Who doesn't love gummy worms? So I want to briefly run through a sample Science Saturday to just sort of give you this overview fleshed out. For the glow-in-the-dark Science Saturday, we read Seeing Stars, which has constellations and shiny pages. It was a really good choice for this. We started our demonstrations by working with glow sticks, and everybody got a glow stick bracelet. We talked about how glow sticks work, what's in a glow stick, why they make that snapping noise, and why the snap is important. Why don't they glow before you agitate them like that? Why does putting a glow stick in a freezer make it last longer? And the follow-up to that, what would happen if we heated it up? We had a break then to make constellations, a nice play on the book that we selected. I got those adhesive-backed puffy stars with glitter on the front. We had black sheets of paper and white and yellow crayons, and then some of those great little stick-them-on-the-wall glow stars. So the kids got to make their own constellations. Then we went back to demonstrations with black lights. Now, a black light is the sort of equipment for a Science Saturday that you may have to make one of those special trips for, or maybe one of your staff members has one. I happen to have a really handy-dandy black light flashlight, which you can get at fancier grade pet stores, but you can also use just one of those bars that people use for Halloween parties, like one of the long tube black lights. Those work just fine. Highlighters fluoresce under black light, so if you write a message with a yellow highlighter on yellow paper, it won't show up until you apply the black light. Then we did the black light over regular water, water that I had squeezed the inside of a highlighter into, which was very messy. Wear gloves when you prep Science Saturday. As well as tonic water, which has quinine in it, so it turns like a really pretty blue, sort of like the back of these slides, actually, under the black light. Very cool. Then we made glow-in-the-dark slime, and there's a ton of great glow-in-the-dark slime recipes out there. I've got one linked on my blog, which I totally recommend. The best way to make glow-in-the-dark slime is to make slime and add glow-in-the-dark paint. and the kids get a real kick out of knowing that that's the secret ingredient. We had a lot of fun really just taking this out there. Again, you get the idea and you stretch it. So once the kids had made their glow-in-the-dark slime and we had it bagged up for them in like the little snack-sized bags, we took them over to the lamps and then turned the lamps off. How does light exposure help this to glow more? Why do we think that is? What would happen if the glow-in-the-dark slime was in a pitch-black hole for 12 months? Lots of thinking. Everybody loved the slime. I think the slime is one of the most popular crafts we've done, so there was much rejoicing. Attendance has been amazing at these programs, especially because the story hour that it loosely replaced was averaging attendance of about 15. So you can see that we've sort of gone leaps and bounds beyond that. Each month we do a different theme, and that peak you see in March was candy, which we figured would draw a big audience, maybe not that big. It was thrilling and exciting. And then in words, we get great feedback on this. The kids will run downstairs, and as soon as I stand up to ask them, hey, can you make sure you're walking in the library, the kid will be like, I play with my glow-in-the-dark slime every day. And his beleaguered mother says, yeah, he really does. Can you please do something else next month? Kids who see me in the community now, and I'm new here, so this really helps me. Say, hey, it's the lady from the library. Are we going to do science? What do you have in your pocket? What glows? They ask me scientific questions, which sometimes I can answer and sometimes I can't. But it's really cool to act as an access point and feel that they want to come to me with these questions, and hopefully that's translating into library service in other ways. Parents are constantly saying to me, to my director, and even to the press in our area that they wish that the library had had something like this when they were kids. And so do I. So this is a really fulfilling part of my job for me. I think the best things that I can tell you about Science Saturday, the things that are yes, I would totally do again, are that we see new kids and happy caregivers. We do Science Saturday on Saturday, and we do it in the middle of the day. So this is really a program that we offer to not only try to offer something to parents and caregivers and families who can't attend our weekday or weekday evening programming, but just a whole different crowd comes in for this. These are school-aged kids that don't attend my preschool story times, and they seem to like it. We've gotten a lot of really sort of friendly feedback about the library as a result of doing these programs. Attendance, as you saw, is up, and our circulation of these programs is up, not just of science materials, but of all our children's materials, which is making me feel very gold star worthy. You can do Science Saturday anywhere. I do these at the library, but the last one, which we did just a couple weekends ago, the weather was beautiful, and we had our Friends of the Library book sale going on in the room that I usually use, so we did it outside. And the hardest part was just getting an extension cord run into the building so I could use a microwave to make exploding soap, which was a hit. Exploding soap is super easy. The kids really love the glow-in-the-dark slime. Like I mentioned, we did Pop Rocks and Skittle Paint for the Candy Week, and they still rave about that. I also really loved the Skittle Paint. It made my office smell great for 2 whole days. It was amazing. And exploded soap was more popular, I think, with the parents even than it was with the kids. One of the dads was like, I want to do this for camping. Like, excellent, science, go for it. Some concerns and things that I would want to caution you may happen if you're going to try to replicate these programs in any way is that kids who are excited about science are totally going to show up in full, excited, nerd-on force for these programs. And some of them are so excited to be able to do a science program that they may try to lead you. So if you've got some really enthusiastic participants, some gentle redirecting is in order. So just be prepared to do that with the same skills you use during story time. Occasionally we'll have concerns on space depending on what we're doing. And by space I mean physical space where we're doing this, space between what I'm doing as a demonstration and where the kids need to be. We just did the explosions Science Saturday outside, as I was mentioning, and one of the things that we were doing was going to have an uncontrolled upward, possibly outward explosion. So you need to be able to manage the kids if you're going to have anything like that to get them into an area where they're not going to get bonked in the eye with a film canister with an Alka-Seltzer tablet in it. So just keep control of your crowd. I really love having them do science pledges with me where if they get at all out of hand, I just hold up my hand and make them wave at me to show that they're hearing me, and then have them repeat after me. And it's something like, I promise to never, never, never put the exploded soap in my mouth or feed it to my sister. And I make them shake their hands with me for the never, never, never. And the kids who come back every month love it. And if I don't make them do a science pledge, they ask for one. So It's a fun little part of the program and a good way to get them involved. If you're doing a lot of demonstrations that everybody gets to do rather than just one that you're doing that everybody gets to watch, like for the Candy Week, we did a lot of things at tables and we were all doing them together. So I led them, the kids did what I told them to on a schedule, and then we all got to witness this together. The Candy Week was kind of out of control attendance-wise, though, and so some kids got a little off-kilter, and keeping them together and keeping the room all focused on you as you lead them through these things can be a challenge when you get big crowds. So this is another way that volunteers, your parents in the room can help, or you can just make sure that things are passed out in a very regimented way, whatever works for you. We don't do registration for these programs, and as you saw, the attendance is a little over the map. I think because of the low cost of putting on these materials, I'm okay, even with my very limited programming budget, to overbuy, because any surplus I'll be able to use somewhere down the line. Baking soda is not going to go out of style in children's departments. But if you have a real concern or want to just control this program a little better, registration may be the way to go, not only so that you can plan ahead for seating, which has sometimes bitten me by not knowing how many people are showing up, but also how many things to set out in advance, how many crafts you may need to prepare, and so forth. So if anybody's got any questions, I'll be happy to talk about those now. The slides that are going to be available immediately after this one are resources that I've talked about, also some books that I recommend, some of the ones that we featured earlier, and then the image credits for the photos that weren't mine. So if anybody's got questions, I hopefully have answers.
Thanks, Alex. This is Bradley again. If you have questions for Alex, you can send those in right now, and I will read them out loud. And if we don't get to them before we go on to our next panelist, I will save them till the end, and we will answer them. So I do have at least one question for Sarah in the wings. We will get back around to that one. I do have a couple questions that I can answer. First of all, and Alex just said this, the slides will be available, and I've put that website in our chat, but it's owlsnet.org. /CE/past. I'll put that in again pretty shortly, but if you look tomorrow, you'll see a link to the archive and the slides that I have, and that way you can get direct links to all those resources that Alex just shared. All right, so I think we will move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Katie Kiekefer, and I'm going to make Katie the presenter right now. People are a little bit behind on those questions. All right, so we will come back around those questions at the end because I don't want to get us behind schedule. So here is Katie.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you to Bradley and to YSS for allowing me to be a part of this wonderful panel. I am so excited to talk to you guys today. Like Bradley said, my name is Katie Kiekefer. I'm the head of youth services at the Whitefish Bay Public Library. That's me with a enormous, I think it was like lawn materials. It's a box shoved into the back seat of my tiny little Corolla, so I am definitely an expert in talking about recyclable materials. Just to give you a little bit of context about Whitefish Bay, we are a northern suburb of Milwaukee. We're part of the Milwaukee County Federated Library System. Our total population in the community is around 14,000, and within that community, about 40% of the community has children under the age of 18. And I think, like a lot of you, most of our programming numbers come from story time. And we definitely have more competition for our kids' attention and for their time as they get older. So to start, I want to explain a little bit about what I mean by recyclables. So in the sense of doing programming, I mean plastic containers, yogurt containers, laundry detergent, blueberry containers. I think my dream plastic container are the little containers that hold cherry tomatoes. Anything that has kind of an interesting shape. And also packaging, various types of cardboard boxes, paper towel tubes, really anything that is fun and interestingly shaped and unique. So why recyclables? I think the biggest part is that it's hugely budget friendly. I've done programs with 50-plus participants, and the only money I spent was on a few rolls of duct tape that I could use for other programs. It's also green. I think all of us are are aware that there's always some sort of program supplies that aren't going to be a cherished item in these children's houses, that eventually they're going to get tossed in the garbage. So if we're already using recyclable materials and they get put in the recycling bin, it's less to be adding. I also think it's a great way to get non-YS staff members involved and invested in programming. I usually send out an email to staff with a wish list of items and then let them know where to drop off items, and then I send them pictures of the program results after the program with a huge thank you to them, especially with front desk people and our circulation staff. They are definitely kind of our first response when it comes to patrons. So if they are excited about what you're doing, they can definitely help you promote your programs. I also think that it lends itself very much to STEAM and STEM programming. Like Alex, I love STEAM and STEM and love kind of incorporating it into our programming. And again, they're often open concept or concept focused, and a lot of different age groups can attend, and you'll see some examples of that. So, potential pitfalls. I think youth services librarians always deal with storage issues, but if you're using these types of materials, you really need to be aware of how you're going to store things. And that usually means, making sure that your director is aware of your plans and your programming plans, making sure that you're making room for things, giving people a timeline on how long you're going to have an enormous pile of boxes in your staff room. And I think just being aware that these are not normal program supplies. So for instance, your coworkers probably don't want to eat their lunch surrounded by piles of empty yogurt containers. And you also need to communicate with your janitorial staff so that your programming supplies don't get recycled. It has happened to me in every single professional job that I've had. So I think leaving them a note to let them know that you're collecting supplies, when the program is, and then make sure you are very clearly labeling them so you don't have, a day of scramble. There's always safety to consider. I think especially with a bigger program, you're going to have things like glue guns, box cutters, and sharp edges, and that creates some really fun potential for fun in a program. But I think you also need to make sure that you know your audience, you know your age group, and also that you are being consistent with who gets to use things. Are only grown-ups allowed to use the box cutter? You can see we have our grown-ups only box cutter. And just to be aware and be consistent. I also think that the potential for gross donations are always there. So with the types of we can say, like, please wash out your yogurt containers, but before you do a program, make sure that you don't have anything that's weird or stinky or gross, and get it out of the way before you actually do the program. Now, I've done these types of programs in 3 different libraries, as I've mentioned, and I've never had any type of community resistance, but I think it's something to consider. I think you are the best person to know your community. Are they going to have issues with you having these types of programs? Like I said, it's never been a problem, but I think it's good to be aware. All right, so let's get into some ideas. So I think that if you're just wanting to start using recyclables in your programming, a great way to start is to use them as kind of a base for programming and then add on more traditional craft supplies. We did a robot transformations program where we collected brown paper grocery bags, and then, as you can see, used more of our traditional craft supplies, googly eyes, feathers, pipe cleaners, things like that. I am also a huge fan of the Show Me Librarian, and I saw her idea for shoebox top cities on her blog. And you can see the kids at this program, they used the shoeboxes as a base and then used, again, those more traditional craft supplies to create a city. And then, of course, waste not, want not. We used the actual boxes to create houses and used a very similar idea. Again, the great thing about this program, we had K4 all the way up to 5th graders at these programs. We did a lot of great brainstorming about, what is in a city and what kind of things do you have in your home and what would be the best places to put things in a home and, what makes sense to have cities next to each other. Kind of a nice way to do some STEAM. All right, so again, I'm a huge STEAM fan, and I think recycling and using that sort of junk mentality, it really does lend itself nicely to STEAM-based programming. We had our 3rd through 5th graders build things that would protect an egg from a far drop. You can see the ladder that's in the background. And again, obviously balloons are not going to be something that would be a recyclable material, but we can use a lot of recyclable materials in this concept. So we have a lot of packaging, we have a lot of plastic bags, yogurt containers, and you can see all of those were completely different. It really let them have more room to create and experiment and problem solve. We also do a somewhat regular program at the library called the Engineering Bag Mystery Challenge, or the Engineering Mystery Bag Challenge. And I think one of the most exciting ideas was the Scrap Paper Tower Challenge, and this was also the easiest. I'm sure all of you have a stack of scrap paper somewhere in your back room, maybe hold lists or old brochures. For this program, we had the kids have tape and paper, and it was up to them to create a tower. And what constituted a tower in their mind was fine with us. So some of them wanted a tower that was really strong. Some of them wanted a tower that was really, really huge. All of those options worked. And again, we kind of present the Engineering Mystery Bag Challenge as come and see what it is. And we do a great big Iron Chef reveal, like today's mystery bag ingredient is paper. And they all absolutely just get so excited and freak out. So as part of trying to serve our community better, we are trying to offer more Saturday programs and really offer more family programs. So we're not placing as many restrictions on which ages can come and creating that disappointment. These are 2 very similar programs that were both really successful and really fun. We had each family or a group, we actually had a group of tween boys who wanted to just work on their own, which was fine. We had them create a hole for our DIY golf course, and then at a different event we had them create marble runs. And again, this is all about collecting interestingly shaped recyclable materials, packaging, containers. You'll see a lot of tubes, anything that kind of ends up in your delivery. If it's interestingly shaped, I usually snag it. And, the nice thing is we allow ourselves to be very hands-off from a staff perspective during this program. We start the program by explaining the concept, doing a bit of brainstorming as a group. How do you get something to go downhill? If you have to build something up, how do you do that? And then we just let everyone create, and it was wonderful to see all of the families working together to really, work through ideas, and they were all so proud of themselves. And especially it was great to see them, every family and every little group moved around to see what everyone else was working on and to follow, people played through on the mini golf course. And it was just a really great, great fun program. All right, finally, when in doubt, junk art. If you take nothing else away from this, I'd love for you to try a junk art program at your library. It is incredibly simple. Like I said, put a call out to your staff members, collect a huge variety of materials. Again, make sure that you don't have anything weird or stinky, and put out all of the materials on a big, huge, long table. Supply lots of duct tape, scissors, hot glue, glue, and then just let them create. The nice thing about doing a junk art program, you can give it a theme. For previous summer reading programs, I've done things like alien junk art or robot junk art if it was a science theme. I've done a space program where the junk art portion was just a little bit of a a little bit of a part of the program. And then you can also just have it be a regular, simple junk art program. At this particular program, we started the program by watching some clips on YouTube of artists who use found objects in their art. And they talked about, the art that they were making. You had people welding. You had people taking little bits of magazines and making mosaics. And we talked about the need for problem solving and engineering in creating art out of found objects. And, this was just a really fun program. Again, it's very hands-off from a staff perspective. They really drive their projects and work at their own pace and kind of tackle things on their own. And that allows us to just go around and have those nice open-ended conversations with them and have them talk about the story that they're crafting with this, the robot on the right. That was a chicken. I think you can probably tell it looks a little bit like a chicken. And just seeing the wonderful things that they're created. I think the kids have a great time. They're incredibly proud of what they make. They're working at their own pace. They're problem solving, and it's just a really fun program with results. And like I said, you have parents that come in. They see what their kids are working on. I think they do have a moment of, oh, now I have to get that home, and now I have to bring that home. But I think the fact that it can be put in the recycling bin or they can take it apart for parts is a good thing. I also think in terms of using recyclable materials, I hope that it gives families kind of an opening to try it at home. I don't think any of the programs that we're doing are things that you couldn't try at home. So if it's a rainy day and, everybody's getting antsy, maybe we'll try to build something out of paper like we did at the library. So. All right. So thank you very much. I think if you have any questions, I would love to hear them. Like everyone else, I am also on Pinterest. I'm on Twitter as well, and if you would love to send an email, I'd love to hear ideas or questions. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Katie. We do have a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
Let's see. We have one comment that says we did a NASA program and learned about satellites which become space junk. Then we used recycled materials into satellites. So that sounds like fun. Yeah. And the questions are, I'm going to read you 3 questions and then you can take them in whatever order you like. What other challenges have you done? How long are these programs? Oh, and another, how long are these programs? So what other challenges have you done and how long are your programs?
Sure. Great questions. So the other challenges that we've done, we did a pom-pom toss mystery bag challenge. That was a little bit more structured. So we gave them a little lunch bag full of obviously a pom-pom, and then I think rubber bands, paper, there was a cup, a few other objects, and they could either use all of the objects or use some of the objects. You can hear my little timer go off in the background, sorry. Yeah, so it was definitely a little bit more structured, but they had about an hour to work on that. And I think we did a catapult, so very similar. I would say if you Google Engineering Mystery Bag Challenge, there is a lot of information there. I'm also a huge fan of the PBS Design Squad website. You can go in and they give you can choose which ingredients, quote, quote, you have, what kind of programming supplies you have, and then I use that to put that in a bag and then let them go and do something. Like PBS will kind of say, here's some projects that you could do with these materials. As for time, I think with the recyclables as a base, the shoebox thing and the engineering mystery bag, we try to keep it to about an hour. For the junk art, I think that tops out at about an hour and a half. And I think if you get past that, it gets to be a little bit, I think they tend to get a little crazy. I think an hour and a half is a good option. But it really does keep them busy for that amount of time. And for those kids that want to work through something really quickly, they can also take the time to maybe make 3 or 4 things instead of 1. For the family fun programs, that was definitely more of a longer morning. I think we started at 10, and tentatively had them stop at noon, but I know some people did take a little bit longer. So.
All right, thank you, Katie. We are going to keep things moving along, I'm going to pass the presenter on to Amanda Struckmeyer, but if you have a question waiting that hasn't been answered yet for Sarah, Alex, or Katie, don't worry, we are going to come back around to that. So stick with us and we will get to those questions at the end. But now we're going to have our last panelist speak, Amanda Struckmeyer.
Hi. Let's see here. All right. This is Amanda Struckmeyer. I'm a youth services librarian at the Middleton Public Library. We are just outside of Madison. We've got a population just shy of 20,000 people, but we do draw a lot of people in from Madison as well. I chiefly work with ages 8 to 12, so I mostly focus on the tween set, and I'll be talking today about our Make It Monday series, which is something we've done for tweens in the summer. And we've offered this, as the name suggests, on Mondays during the summer. Not every Monday, but we'll offer maybe 3, 4, or 5 during the summer. And we do advertise it for ages 8 to 12. We don't strictly enforce that by any means, and we have a lot of younger siblings who come or younger kids who come who are curious, and we don't turn people away, but we do advertise it for 8 to 12. When we run these, we run 2 sessions on the same day, and each session is 90 minutes. So we'll do a mid-afternoon, so something like 1 o'clock to 2:30, and then again in the evening, so something like 6:30 to 8 p.m. We try to avoid the dinner hour and the kind of right after work time too. And we don't ask for registration. It's completely drop-in, which makes planning a little hairier, but we've gotten nice feedback from families about having it to drop in. And I will say that our afternoon sessions are much more well-attended than our evening sessions, but I wouldn't want to give up the evening sessions because the kids who come in the evening a lot of times either are booked during the day or families are working during the day, so I feel like it's really important to provide the daytime and the evening slots for this program. And this is a really good way if you're wanting to get into more of the makerspace type programming or more of the STEAM, like a lot of other people have been talking about STEAM. If you're wanting to introduce those things in your library, this is a nice way to do it. It's pretty low commitment, and the projects are really fun and easy, and we structured it in almost a DIY manner. We used our large conference room, and I set up everything in kind of an assembly line style, and I would hand out instructions, and a lot of times they were double-sided instructions because a lot of times we were doing two related projects on the same day. So I'd hand out instructions, usually illustrated instructions, as the kids and families came in, and then they were free to take as much or as little time as they wanted to, kind of going through the project. And that was nice because it allowed people to arrive at different times, and it also gave me the freedom to kind of mingle, and I didn't feel like I was the teacher in any way. I felt like the kids were really leading themselves and using the instructions. So that was really nice. It put a lot of the power in their hands. I'll just be talking about 3 of our Make It Monday projects today, and those are listed on the screen. Not Your Average Bubble Makers, Launch It, and Go Speed Racer. So Not Your Average Bubble Maker, I found 2 really great patterns for bubble makers. One was to blow really big bubbles you make a bubble maker using straws and string. It's really easy, and it really works. And that website is listed here, along with the Bubble Snake Maker, and they're actually from the same blog, Come Together Kids. I don't know the person who runs it. I'm in no way affiliated with this blog, but it is fantastic, and she's got a ton of great ideas that are really practical on her website. So, yeah, the Bubble Snake Maker you take an empty plastic bottle, like a single-serve water bottle, and you cut off the bottom of it, and you put a sock or a washcloth over the bottom so that it's nice and tight, and then you dip the fabric in bubble solution, and you blow through the mouthpiece, and the bubble solution leaves the fabric, making millions of tiny little bubbles in a long snake. So it's really cool. And we did these inside in our conference room. Ideally, of course, we would love to have outdoor programming space, but we just don't have the space here at Middleton, so we did it inside, and it worked just fine. It was great. I made 2 different types of bubble solution, and I put the ingredients, kind of posted them next to the containers so that people could see what they were using. And we had a large tarp so that people could actually try their bubble makers before they left that day. Another project was called Launch It, and this was also a 2-parter, or two projects on the same day. They were related. One is the puffball zingers that I think by now probably everyone has done this at their library, but it just never gets old, and the kids love it. We used puffballs instead of mini marshmallows, and here's the website. This is, again, that same Come Together Kids. And all of her projects are illustrated, so like I stole this picture from her. So it's really easy to use her projects. They have got step-by-step instructions, and it makes it really easy and clear. And then we did Catapults, which I looked and looked for a good no-fail Catapult pattern that would also be kind of cool, and this was the one I ended up with. I'm sorry I don't have a picture on here, but this website will lead you to it. And it was really neat, and it did involve some wood glue, which of course the kids adored, and putting a little, like a little baker's cup or a little nut cup, gluing that onto a clothespin. So it was nice. It was like just the right amount of putsy, and I felt like we were really building something, but it was still really easy and accessible. So we did those in the same day, and I believe the catapults actually needed to dry, like kind of take this home and it will dry in a few hours, which was a little bit nice because then we didn't have people catapulting things all over the room. We just had people zinging puffballs, which was plenty. And the next project I'll talk about is called Go Speed Racer. These were balloon cars, and somebody else mentioned the Design Squad website through pbskids.org, and this is an awesome website, and they actually have multiple different balloon car recipes and instructions on there. This is the one we selected. It's 2 wheels. It's hard to see in the picture, but the wheels are actually made of breath mints, so that's fun. So this was a project that I brought on my school visits, and I just brought the ingredients in an envelope, and I pulled them out, and I said, any idea what we could make with, and then I would pull out a straw and a tongue depressor and 2 mints, and it was just like the most random ingredients, and then it's really quick to put together, so I would quick put it together and zoom it across the room, and it's got a nice, gives you a lot of bang for your buck. This one does. A few things. Materials prep is definitely key. It's hard when you have no idea how many people are coming, but I felt like it was worth it to estimate high. And then get everything really organized before the kids come. So somebody else mentioned trying the projects before the date. Definitely do that. And get everything like you want it when the kids are going to get there. You don't want to have to be opening packages or looking for anything. I also felt like it was really worth it to invest in some nice plastic tubs if you have the space to store things, so that I could put them in, and I think in the end we ended up with like 2 tubs for all the stuff, and they're just labeled Make It Mondays, so then the next time we want to do these programs, we can just pull out the tubs, and there's most of the stuff. I mean, we might have to go to the store for balloons or something, but most of it is in there. Actually, I know we'll have to go to the store for breath mints because I think those got eaten. But yeah, so I can't say enough about organizing your materials on the front end and on the back end. And also looking for projects that use common, inexpensive materials. Some things I did have to order online. I ended up ordering some of the components for the catapults online because we needed special size pieces of wood. But it was pretty easy and cheap once it came down to it. And once you've got it, and you know where you can get more. And I mentioned the illustrated instructions. I felt like this was a real key. No matter how clearly you write out the instructions, adding that picture really helps kids and families to know exactly what you mean. So before I sign off, here's just an example of an instruction sheet that I would have had. This was one side of my bubble makers because the other side would have been the giant bubble makers. And it just lists out all the components that they would need, and these would be situated on the supply table in that order. And it goes through step by step, and it's got photos. And these are nice too because you can save these on your computer, and then the next time you want to do the program, just print them out. So definitely worth sinking the time into making good instructions. I think it pays off big time. So that's what I've got. So Bradley, we'll send it back to you.
Thanks, Amanda. Thank you so much for sharing. So, folks, we have time left to answer some more questions, so please submit them using the question box. Backing up a little bit, I don't have any questions right this second for Amanda. People are probably still typing them. That's what's been happening as they come in a couple of seconds delayed. So let's back up a little bit. Hopefully all of our speakers are still with us. Sarah, going back to the beginning, we have a question for you. What are some of your favorite projects for Art Club?
Okay. Some of the favorite ones we've done would be origami heart bookmarks, which were really easy, and I used copy paper that we had as well as some other decorative scrapbook paper that was on hand. Zen doodles were really popular. Kids could make their own, or I had some like heavy black outline shapes, elephants, butterflies, snakes, that they could then fill in. We also posted those, and that was great. The finished paper star was a really neat project. That one was a little bit more complicated, and I do include in my advertising in the newspaper and stuff that if kids are under 8 years old, they will need an adult or an older caregiver on hand to help them, so that helps. 3D illusion drawing was fun. We've done handmade books, pinwheels, Guatemalan worry dolls, mandalas. So sometimes if I can tie in cultural stuff to other countries or tie it back to our collection to help boost that circulation, like some of the other panelists have mentioned, that's a great way to enhance your library services. In April one year, we did some newspaper poetry collage, so sometimes I'll tie it into a monthly theme or things that we have on display. Watercolor Resist was fun, and that's just white crayon and watercolors. Let's see if I have any other ones. We did salt dough, and I included take-home instructions on how to bake items that they made with it. So a lot of times if it's a technique or something like that, like when we did masking recently, I talked about other ways that they could use that technique in their lives, in decorating their bedrooms, for gift making or whatever. Tissue paper stained glass was really one of my absolute favorites, and I just used some of the cutout frames that you can get from Discount School Supply. They have like an 8.5 by 11 opening, and contact paper, and then our tissue paper that we get at the dollar store for a ton of it, and that one was really enjoyable for the kids. I did, because the club is named Make and Take Art Club, the take part is very important to the kids, I've learned. So the way I learned that was we did a collaborative art project one time, which was everybody's handprints, and then they painted it, and then I pasted it up. I decoupaged it onto a really large poster frame that you get for like $5 with a quote from Pablo Picasso that every child is an artist. And so what I did is some of the kids were like, hey, we're not taking anything home. I let them make extra hands. So it all worked out, but I thought that was something cool, and I have that hanging behind my desk, and I talked to them about it. So some of the other projects you'll see on Pinterest, and I do have, sometimes I have illustrated directions, sometimes I just show the technique and have the materials out and let them go for it. So if anybody has questions, feel free to email me. I'm happy to share what I have. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. I've got now a couple of quick questions for Alex. Alex, we have a question. How many kids do you plan to have craft materials ready for? And also, and you can answer these, if you want me to repeat one, let me know, but do you check with your local schools to see if you're duplicating their existing science classes, or has that not been an issue? This has happened to Judy, the person who posed the question.
Gotcha. So for the how many crafts to prepare, Bradley, could you share my screen again? So what I try to do when we're doing these crafts for take-home things is to work on something that I can make from a rectangle. So I've got pre-cut, hopefully everybody can kind of see this now. So pre-cut white rectangles on cardstock or something like that. Then we then sort of mark up either with the Skittle paint, which you'll see up top, or with the bubbles down below. So the prep for that is mostly either myself or a library assistant cutting the paper. And the great thing about paper is I know I'm going to have use for these squares. To directly answer the question, in the beginning I planned for 40 just to like totally have enough, and then I didn't. So now for every Science Saturday I prepare 50, probably 70 if I'm going to do anything like candy again, materials for people to use. For things like slime, where only probably a certain number of kids are going to do it, maybe the younger kids or the older kids will either be too handsy or too cool for school to participate, those I'll probably plan on about 20 to 30. I try to have some extra in the back. Also, some kids come in late or see the kids carrying around their slime, so I try to have a little extra on hand there. So yeah, for planning purposes, enough for 50, which has done me pretty solid so far. And then more hands-on crafts like the slime or something that they get to take home very handsy in a container, 25 to 30. As far as duplicating science curricula in the local schools, this hasn't been an issue yet, knock on wood. I do advertise these programs really heavily to the schools, and in fact we take quarter sheets, double-sided, and one side is the Science Saturday flyer, and then on the on the other side our upcoming program, so that everybody's got a little reminder for the fridge. I take those to the schools about a week and a half or 2 weeks in advance of the program, and so far I haven't heard anything about duplication, and the parents and kids are really excited. When I did some similar stuff in Verona, which is a much bigger, this feels like a loaded term, but a slightly more metropolitan area, there were some kids who came in a little more familiar, maybe not totally on the line, but they knew a lot about what we were doing. Here it's very new. So I've been very lucky that this community is so open and excited about what I'm doing, but I will keep that in mind for the future. I'm so sorry that there's been duplication for you before. So far, all good here. Thank you for those questions.
We have one related comment. One participant is saying, as a former science teacher, I would welcome the repetition. So there's another perspective on that one. So thank you, Alex. We have a question now for Katie. Katie, do you think that a junk art program could be incorporated into this summer's hero or superhero theme?
That is a wonderful question. I think that it could. I think off the top of my head, I was thinking, if you had a supervillain layer, like I feel like, I'm thinking about like the Batman movies from the 90s. Everything kind of had that very sort of junk sort of aesthetic. I feel like you could definitely create some very cool supervillain layers with junk art. I think it would also be interesting to see if you could create a vehicle, your superhero's vehicle. Like maybe it's the Wonder Woman plane, maybe it's the Batmobile, and maybe it's a superhero that you make up in your head and create a really elaborate storyline. And that might be something that you could do as not just a standalone junk art program, but maybe craft a superhero persona. You could do a drawing of the supervillain's vehicle or the superhero's vehicle, and then be able to take that and transform it into junk art. So.
All right. Thank you. And now we have a question for Amanda, preceded by thank you to all of the presenters. And this questioner is wondering, would Amanda be willing or able to share her illustrated instructions?
I can send those to you, Bradley, if you can post them. I will say that I sometimes steal photos from people online, and I try to put their website on there. I know it's not best practice, but I'll just be completely honest and say that I do that sometimes. So if it were like the perfect world and I had tons of time to pour into this, which I'm sure you all do, I would take the photos myself, of myself doing the step-by-step, but sometimes I don't. And I have even gone so far sometimes as to contact people who run blogs or websites to ask if it's okay to put their photos on, and I've never been told no. So that may be another route to go if you're feeling like a little bit hesitant to include other people's photos. So I typically do that. So I can recommend that. But Bradley, I can send you my illustrated instructions to share with everybody.
That's great, Amanda. So folks, and I've put this in the chat a few times, but anything that the panelists have shared with me in terms of slides or resources, I will post those at www.owlsnet.org/ce/past. Those resources and an activity report and a link to the webinar recording will all be there. Check tomorrow because it takes me a little while to pull all this stuff together. And there will also be an email going out, so you'll have that link. But absolutely anything the panelists want to share, I will make available. And I have one final question for all of our panelists, so you all can just jump right in. And it doesn't have to be the last question. If somebody's out there still typing, feel free. But this is the last one I have in the inbox right now. So for all the speakers, how have you advertised for these programs? Participant Amy says, attendance has been challenging for me with any age groups over about age 6. So whoever wants to jump in, just jump in.
I guess I can start. Okay. This is Katie. So we have we have our Facebook page. We have kind of the traditional means. I think getting the word out in terms of putting up signs, we try to not overwhelm people with signs, but make sure that people are seeing things, just doing flyers. I think we've been using Canva at our library, which is an online program where you can make some really cool visual program flyers. I think if you can use pictures, that is a really wonderful thing to do. Anything that's bright and colorful can really attract attention. I think getting the word out to the schools is really important. We try to get our information. There's like the Cougar Chronicles in our town, so the elementary school has a flyer that the parents get. So we've been trying to include our information in there. I also think due to the nature of our community, like I said, we have a lot of little ones coming to story time who have older brothers and sisters, and especially with our family programs, since we do have them open to a wider range of ages, telling the parents that what's going on and giving them the heads up and sending them home with flyers just so that they know that we don't just stop at story time. But that's a really good question.
this is Alex, to sort of ping off what Katie just mentioned, something that's been really helpful for me and I think has helped add to that bump that we've seen some months when we get really popular at Science Saturday is mentioning it after or during story time. In our current story hour schedule, craft is sort of the middle activity between huge points of the story. And so during that time when the parents are chatting with one another or helping kiddos with crafts, I always bring up our calendar. We try to make our Science Saturday flyers as bright and visually engaging as possible, which is a really good way to catch the eye when I hold them up when people are working on the craft. We pass these flyers out to the schools. Like Katie was saying, we do a lot of the same things. But something that's been very helpful is to remind the people who are already in the library that, hey, this is not the only program that we do. This is not just for people who get them in the schools. You can come too. And because this is really important to me, I'm pretty shameless about talking about it to everyone. I keep one of the flyers on my desk so everybody sees it. Every time they check out, I mention. We, 1 month, and we'll probably do this again in the future, we made little bookmark slips, and everybody who got holds, we just chucked the bookmark in to the first hold in their stack saying, hey, these are some events coming up at the library. And I keep the little slips down at the children's desk too, so anybody, whether I'm there or not, when they're checking out, can take as many as they'd like. And I pretty much tell everybody to tell their friends.
Okay. Does anybody else want to speak about advertising? If not, we'll wrap up, but who wants to jump in? Anybody?
Sure. This is Sarah. And in addition to what Katie and Alex already mentioned, we also have a column in our local newspaper, so we include all the events there. We do have digital signage at the checkout desk, and so we have that there along with our monthly calendar. I did talk about having homeschool audiences, so whenever I'm talking to people who are maybe using our library but not from our community, or they're homeschoolers, I offer to add them to my email distribution list for the calendar, and then when I send that calendar each month, I go ahead and just write kind of a little newsy, this is awesome, here's what's happening at the library for different age groups, kind of welcome to them. And we also put our calendar on our website and our Facebook page. So. But I find that the hand selling and reminding people and having the reminder flyers available when we have Make and Take Art Club so that they have that date for the next time that we come, especially a lot of our school-age kids are here on their own, and then they can bring it home and make sure that their family is informed about the next event they want to attend. So, yeah, good question.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for attending, and I want to give thanks again to our panelists, Sarah Kernoyer, Alexandra Janelle Collins, Katie Kiekefer, and Amanda Struckmeyer. I also want to just recognize the Youth Services section for sponsoring this webinar and helping to identify our panelists. I hope everybody is walking away with a lot of good ideas to try out. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. If you have questions, you can send them to me. I will get them to the panelists. Check back tomorrow for those resources and the webinar recording. Thank you so much for joining us.